Bom dia, teachers do Brasil. Meu nome é Alessandra Moura, eu sou gerente sênior da área de educação básica e ensino de língua inglesa do British Council no Brasil. Eu vou começar com a minha audiodescrição essa manhã. Eu sou uma mulher branca, de cabelos castanhos, olhos claros, perdão, castanhos claros. E hoje eu estou me conectando de São Paulo. Eu estou na minha casa em São Paulo, tem uma parede branca atrás de mim, o fundo está meio esfumaçado, tem um armário cinza, quase preto, também atrás, aparecendo, e eu estou usando uma blusa lilás bem clarinha, e com brincos prateados, com uns detalhes também roxo. Ahn, e é isso. E aí eu vou começar exatamente por aí. Começar falando sobre a importância de nós promovermos cada vez mais práticas de acessibilidade e de inclusão nas nossas sessões de formação continuada, né? Eu faço essa audiodescrição não só para pessoas cegas ou parcialmente cegas que não podem me ver na tela. Eu faço essa autodescrição também porque tem muitas pessoas, eu mesma, que acessa conteúdos que são gravados com imagens online para formação continuada no dia a dia, mas fazem isso sem visualizar a tela. E quando a gente faz a autodescrição, a gente ajuda essas pessoas, essa audiência a conseguir contextualizar e trazer um pouco dessa imagem visual para dentro. Isso ajuda não só os adultos, né, que são os professores de inglês do Brasil que estão se conectando hoje, mas isso também pode ajudar os seus estudantes na sala de aula ou os seus professores que estão é, acompanhando, que fazem, trabalham com vocês como para formação continuada. Então, eu recomendo que vocês adotem essa prática. No início, a gente se sente um pouco estranho, é diferente, mas depois você vai se acostumando, como eu já me acostumei a fazer essa audiodescrição. E aí, hoje, a gente celebra o quinto dia da ELT Week Brasil de 2024. Essa é a terceira edição dessa conferência. Vou chamar ela de conferência online. A gente também já chamou ela na primeira rodada como encontro online, de professores para professores de língua inglesa e também para gestores escolares. E de fato não deixa de ser um encontro, né? Nós encontramos colegas através do chat do YouTube que vão dando bom dia, vão dizendo de onde estão se conectando. Então, hoje, por exemplo, olha que legal, a gente tem a Sandra que está se conectando da Argentina. Muito legal. Que bom ter você aqui, Sandra. É, e a gente já teve, nesse ano, pessoas de Olinda, de São Paulo, do sul do Brasil, enfim. É sempre uma infinidade e é muito gostoso a gente saber que não estamos sozinhos, né? Como professores e educadores ou gestores de projetos, de programas de ensino de língua inglesa, tem uma coisa que nós não estamos sozinhos. São 172 mil professores de inglês que só considerando os dados do censo de 2021, quer dizer, um tempo atrás, esse número deve ter aumentado, que estão ensinando em sala de aula em escolas. Mas o nosso alcance, através da ELT Week, vai para além de professores de sala de aula. E isso é muito importante, porque a gente tem uma parceria com o Ministério da Educação. A ELT Week é uma parceria do British Council com o Ministério da Educação do Brasil. Então, é muito importante a gente trazer os professores que estão na sala de aula, mas a verdade é que a gente sabe que com a ELT Week a gente alcança professores de inglês ou profissionais do campo de internacionalização que estão atuando dentro de universidades, professores de inglês que têm uma prática particular, que trabalham em cursos, né, em centros de ensino de língua, enfim, e por isso que também a ELT Week, além de ser uma conferência online, ela também é um grande encontro desses profissionais online que a gente faz uma vez por ano. Eu vou já já fazer a abertura da sessão do meu querido colega John Shackelton. Ele vai falar sobre a formação, a carreira dos profissionais que são formadores de professores de língua inglesa. Mas antes disso, eu quero explicar um pouquinho sobre outra característica da ELT Week, que é um programa bilíngue, na verdade mais do que bilíngue, porque nós também temos a tradução em Libras acontecendo aqui ao vivo. Mas eu vou falar sobre a questão do português e do inglês. Às vezes, alguns professores, quando a gente coloca a legenda ou quando a gente fez a tradução simultânea de sessões em inglês, falaram assim: Poxa vida, mas eu sou professor de inglês, por que que você está traduzindo para mim? Na verdade, as sessões são bilíngues, então a sessão do John vai ser em inglês também, né? Vai ter a legenda em português, para quem preferir, mas a sessão ela acontece totalmente no original no site do British Council das Américas. Então, se você prefere assistir sem as legendas, você pode ir para o site das Américas e ter esse gostinho da sessão totalmente em inglês, sem nenhum tipo de complementação de língua portuguesa. Agora, por outro lado, por que manter as legendas? Primeiro, porque nosso país, a gente ainda tem muito a desenvolver da língua inglesa, é por isso mesmo que estamos aqui, né? Todo mundo sabe disso. E, na verdade, tem muitos professores que só têm a oportunidade de falar inglês exatamente quando estão na sala de aula com seus alunos. Então, é um desenvolvimento de vocabulário que às vezes não é o suficiente para mantê-los super fluentes, né? Tanto na parte de compreensão quanto na parte de oralidade. Além disso, não existe mais. A gente, pelo menos no British Council, a gente entende que a questão dos sotaques diferentes de inglês, eles estão no coração do uso do inglês como língua franca. E a gente traz parceiros, especialistas do mundo inteiro para falar. Então, a gente teve logo no primeiro dia uma pesquisadora que falou sobre uma pesquisa de inclusão do British Council que tinha um sotaque bastante forte indiano. Hoje a gente tem o John Shackelton, que é da Inglaterra também. A gente já teve profissionais da Escócia, dos Estados Unidos. Tivemos ontem também sessões com colegas que são das Américas. Então, assim, para a gente garantir que a comunicação chegue melhor para todos, para garantir que esse evento seja bastante acessível e também deixando claro que não é um evento para desenvolver a língua inglesa. A gente não está ensinando inglês. É um evento que trabalha, são formações continuadas para professores de inglês que trabalham muito as competências e as habilidades, assim como hoje vai estar trabalhando sobre perspectivas de carreira. Então, não tem necessidade de tudo ser assistido em língua inglesa. E a gente fez questão de tornar o evento o mais inclusivo possível para que cada vez mais pessoas tenham acesso. Bom, com essa explicação, eu convido vocês, caso ainda não tenham se inscrito, se inscrevam através do link que está no chat, para que vocês recebam as informações tanto sobre os conteúdos das sessões, então slides, leituras complementares, como também recebam a avaliação do evento. É super importante, todo ano a gente muda a ELT Week um pouquinho, baseado exatamente no feedback que vocês nos dão. E o certificado de participação, que vai ter este ano 34 horas aula, e a partir do ano que vem vocês também vão poder acessar o conteúdo, a ELT Week, através do AVA MEC, a plataforma do MEC de formação de continuada dos professores. A gente vai pegar as sessões, vai colocar lá, vai ampliar o escopo e vai ter mais de 40 horas. Falei muito para uma abertura, eu encerro aqui e eu gostaria de convidar o meu querido colega John Shackelton, que é um dos consultores seniors especialistas e que lidera toda a parte de desenvolvimento de formadores de professores de língua inglesa pelo British Council globalmente, e que esteve recentemente no Brasil este ano, participou da conferência Brasil, que aconteceu no estado de Goiás, e mais tarde eu vou me juntar a ele para trocar mensagens, olhar os comentários de vocês no YouTube, ler suas perguntas. Então façam perguntas ao longo da sessão e a gente volta daqui a pouco. John, now it's with you. Tchau, até já.
Hello, my name is John Shackleton. I work for the British Council. I look after our work in teacher educator learning. It's a real pleasure to be here today for ELT Week in Brazil. That's the title of my session, Developing a Career as a Teacher Educator. And I'm going to be talking about these things that you can see on the slide in front of you. So if you just take a minute just to have a look at those. So, I'm going to be talking about why I think teacher educators matter. Talking about the different kinds of roles that they have, different things that they do in different settings, and to have a clearer definition of what a teacher educator is and what they do. Then I'm going to look at the kinds of skills and knowledge and competences in general that teacher educators have or can acquire over time. And then take a look at some of the resources that are available, some of the learning opportunities that are available for teacher educators to develop some of those competencies and really to plan their career and learning pathways. And then I'm going to finish with what I've called building blocks, so what I think of in 2024, some key areas that teacher educators need to be skilled in and need to know about if they want to develop or if they want to start a career in teacher education. So I'm going to start off with something quite basic. We often say, don't we, that an education system is only as good as its teachers, and I think that's absolutely true, and I don't know anybody that would disagree with that. So clearly then, if that's the case, one of the determinants of the quality of classroom teaching is the competence of those individuals who teach teachers. So what I'm saying is that as a teacher educator, there's an opportunity to make a real contribution to the professional development of teachers, but not just that, to the education systems that they belong to the institutions where they work, and perhaps most importantly, to the learners that they teach. So what is a teacher educator? What do they do? Well, I've got a few examples here that I think will illustrate the variety and range of roles that teacher educators have. So first, to provide advice to new teachers. A new teacher comes into the school, and something that a teacher educator can do is to give them some advice about how to plan a lesson, go in and observe them, give them some feedback, and generally help them to settle in to the new environment. So an informal role there. Many education systems across the world have got formal roles in mentoring, of course, and school-based mentoring as well, and that's another more formal role that a teacher educator might have. In many systems, but not all by any means, there's a cadre of teacher educators who are individuals who are contracted and paid by the Ministry of Education to deliver, in this case, training for primary school teachers. Right? So a very formally remunerated role as a teacher educator. As we all know, the opportunities for online learning are increasing exponentially. So one of the things that many teacher educators do is that they provide e-moderation, so online training, and the example I've given here, and I'll talk a little bit about a MOOC that we have for teacher educators, is to deliver e-moderation services on a massive open online course. Another role that teacher educators have is connected with research. So the example I've provided here is a researcher in a university who's exploring and gathering insight and data, extending our understanding of particular themes in teacher education. And increasingly, and I'll talk a little bit about this at the end as well, increasingly many teacher educators are involved in practitioner-led research, so investigating their own practice or the practice of others in the training room, so an engagement both with research and in research. As many of you will know from personal experience during your own initial teacher education, one of a very important role at the pre-service level, teacher educators, is working on undergraduate and postgraduate programs, helping teachers in training to develop their skills and prepare for their life as a teacher. An example I've given here is about mentoring. Okay, so university-based mentoring of teachers. So they're just 5 examples of the kinds of things that teacher educators do, which leads us to a definition of a teacher educator, which is an individual who has a role in supporting the professional development of teachers. So everything that I've got to say today is with that audience in mind. Many teacher educators, as I'm sure you're aware, are also teachers, so they're not mutually exclusive groups. You could be a teacher and a teacher educator, but if you're calling yourself a teacher educator, then you've got some kind of role in supporting the professional development of teachers. Okay, so there's a starting point then in terms of a definition of what a teacher educator is and why they're important. And now I'd like to move on to talking about some of the skills, some of the qualities, some of the behaviors, some of the attitudes, beliefs, etc. Group all of those things together in the word competence. So some of the competences that teacher educators have. And I'm going to be referencing, which I think will help us to understand some of those competences, the British Council's CPD framework for teacher educators. It looks like this. It's green, it's a circle, and it's made up of 11 professional practices, which I'm sure you cannot see on this slide, but I've got my next slide will look at the detail. So those professional practices, the areas which are important in terms of skills, understanding that teacher educators need to have, and they're grouped into 3 different areas: knowledge, skills, approaches to development. And it's a framework, so there's an x-axis and a y-axis. So as you can see down there in the bottom left-hand corner, we talk about competence in relation to a 4-point scale, right? So that's part of developing as a teacher educator and becoming more skilled, more experienced, more knowledgeable, etc. over time. So the detail of this, then, these are the 11 professional practices that are included in the CPD framework for teacher educators. So just have a look at that for a second. While I have a quick slurp of coffee, if I may. So, what are we saying now? These are basically answering the question, what does a good teacher educator look like? So they have to know the subject, they have to know something about teacher training, about supporting the professional development of teachers. That's the subject. They need to know the educational context, that the teachers that they support work in, and they need to know something, and not just know, but be able to do something effective in relation to understanding teacher learning. So, for example, theories of adult learning. And they need to have some specific skills. They need to be able to plan and manage teacher learning. They need to evaluate teacher competence, teacher progress. They need, in an ongoing way, to be able to support professional development of teachers, and they need, through their behavior themselves, to set up inclusive training rooms and to work with teachers to help teachers themselves develop their own inclusive practices. They need to know something about supporting remote learning, so as well as being able to deliver training online, they need also to be able to support teachers who teach online. And then finally, 2 professional practices, and particularly important for teacher educators, their ability to take responsibility for their own professional development, their agency, their autonomy in developing as professionals. And finally, and we think this is particularly important, their ability to contribute to the profession. So how are they adding to what we understand in teacher education? How are they adding to the quality of the teachers that they work with, beyond a group of teachers, for the profession as a whole. So they're the 11 professional practices, and I've got an example here which is to do with the professional practice supporting ongoing teacher professional development, and that's broken down further to look at the detail of what's involved in this professional practice. So I'll just give you a minute or so to have a look at that again when I have more coffee. So, for teachers to have skills in supporting professional development in an ongoing way, they need to be able to motivate teachers. They need to be able to indicate what opportunities are available for teachers. They need to be able to give advice and to mentor. They need to be able to observe lessons and give feedback. They need to encourage and also to scaffold the way that teachers think about their practice, how they reflect on what's happened in the classroom, for example, during a lesson. And importantly, and it's a little bit like what we're doing today, they need to be able to work with teachers to help teachers identify what their career goals are, what their professional development plans are, and how to achieve those. So as an example, and all of the professional practices are broken down in this way, more detail about what's involved in each professional practice. And as I was saying, it's on a 4-point scale. So this maps out, if you like, the kind of development, the stages of development that a teacher educator might go through from foundation level to specialization level. So foundation really is that you have established teaching skills and knowledge. You've got that basic teaching experience, right, on which, that's why it's called foundation, on which you can build your career as a teacher educator. And then over time to develop that further, so in relation to these different teacher educator competences that I've been talking about, that through your practice, through your training, through your mentoring, that you're developing skills in particular areas so that you become a more inclusive trainer, for example. And then the integration level, which is a higher level of competence where your practice, your good practice, is embedded in what you are doing, so that some of the competences that we've been talking about become automatic. They become fundamental parts of who you are and what you do as a teacher educator. And then the fourth stage, specialization, which relates to what I was saying about contributing to the profession, that you become some sort of reference point for expert opinion in relation to teacher education. So they're the 4 levels that are part of the journey that teacher educators can go through in their further professional development. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to talk about the kinds of resources that are available for teacher educators if they want to develop further in their careers. But I'm going to preface that by talking a little bit about the idea of community. We have a teacher educator community at the British Council, and what this means is that all of the resources, all of the professional development opportunities we have available for teacher educators are really to be attended to collaboratively. So what we like to think is that all of the teacher educators that engage with us are part of a bigger family, a family that's learning collaboratively in a very safe environment, in an environment which is gender sensitive, which is interesting, which is vibrant, and that brings people from excuse me which brings teacher educators from different settings, different countries, different stages of their professional development together. Okay, so that's an important lens through which we view the learning opportunities that I'm going to be talking about. So what's out there? What's available? Well, we have two kinds of resource, two kinds of opportunity, if you like, open access and closed access. So open access, they're open to any individual. So in that category we have the resources on the Teaching English website. We've got something called the Pathway Builder. We have a monthly webinar program and a newsletter, and we have a MOOC. And I'll explain a little bit more in detail about those. So that's the first category, anybody, they're open to all, open access. And then another set of learning and exchange opportunities, and I've given you four here: the LPAC, the ACT, the COP Leader Support Program, and the Supported Pathway Builder. These are for closed groups, so specific numbers of groups. They're time bound, they start at a particular time, they finish at a particular time. And these opportunities, and there are some teacher educators, for example, in Brazil, who've been through both the LPACT and the ACT. These are opportunities which are organised by the British Council in country. All right, so there's a selection process to go through in order to join these courses. So they're not open to everybody, they're open to particular groups of teacher educators. So they're the two categories: open access, closed access. Okay, so the main place to go for if you want to make use of any of these opportunities is the Teacher Educator landing page on the Teaching English website, and that's the URL there. That's the starting point. It's a great resource. It's got the CPD framework, it's got lots and lots and lots of things on it, details of webinars, etc. Okay, so that's a good starting point, the landing page. Okay, so this is a self-directed program. Okay, it's called the Pathway Builder, and it lasts for 8 weeks, and it's a very, very straightforward kind of program. Yeah, it's not moderated, it's not supported, it's for teacher educators who would like to learn on their own. And it's the CPD framework. Associated with the CPD framework is a self-assessment tool which teacher educators take, and the results of that indicate the kinds of areas that you're already strong at and the kinds of areas, on the contrary, that you would like to develop further. And based on that self-assessment tool, the results of that, then we have some resources that are mapped against that you can choose from. You say, for example, I want to know more about how to help a teacher become a more inclusive teacher. So we've got a resource, it could be a webinar, it could be an article, it could be a research paper. Okay, so to map your interests with learning resources, and then a format that helps you to record your learning from engaging with these particular resources, and from that you can download, you upload your learning journal, your portfolio of resources that you've looked at, what you've taken from them, what you've learned, how you're going to put them into practice, and you upload that in order to download a certificate to say that you've been through this program. So if you're the kind of person that enjoys learning on your own, it's a really, really good program. It helps you to understand your own competences, it helps you to plan and to identify the kinds of resources that will help you to develop. It gives you a format, a template for recording what you've learned from these resources that leads to a certificate. So that's the Pathway Builder. Yeah, it's a good one. Every month we have a webinar program. So this webinar program covers what we believe to be key themes in teacher education. So they're delivered by sometimes experts in this area, sometimes practitioners who've got something particular, a case study, for example, to report on, to talk through. We've covered all sorts of areas: multilingual teaching, artificial intelligence, how to motivate teachers. We've got a full range, and we've got recordings from the 3 series that we've done so far that are available through the Teacher Educator landing page. So we've got about 30 or so webinars which cover some of the key themes in teacher education. So go to our landing page, have a look at what we've done, and sign up for the program for this year. So we're now in September, so October will be the next one, and October we'll be talking about the very controversial issue of the place of English. Okay, so some really interesting topics and themes that you can explore through that webinar program. Got a newsletter, self-explanatory, and we've got a MOOC. Okay, and the MOOC is called Helping Teachers to Learn. Okay, and as you can see, it's divided into 3 modules. It's 12 hours of study, and it looks at 3 things in particular. Right? It looks at training, so how to deliver training. All right. It looks at how to develop facilitation skills. Okay. And it looks at how you can help teachers learn by themselves. So training, facilitation, and scaffolding, self-directed learning. And so really, if you're interested, if you want an introduction to the kinds of things, kinds of skills, knowledge, etc. that teacher educators need to have, it's a great place to start. Okay, and very soon we'll be having a WhatsApp group, which is a dedicated social media space for teacher educators, and do please keep in touch with our landing page for more details of that as we start. Okay, so those were the open access opportunities that I dealt with first, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the closed access learning and exchange opportunities. So there are 4 things that I'd like to talk about. So the first 2 are connected. Okay. We have a training program called the Learning Pathways into the Assured Certificate in Teacher Education. A bit of a mouthful, I know, so that's abbreviated to LPACT. And we have the Assured Certificate in Teacher Education, ACT. Okay, so both of those courses focus on how to deliver effective workshop style training. All right. We have a program called the Community Practice Leader Support Program, and the focus there is on facilitation skills. How do you set up, how do you sustain, how do you evaluate communities of practice for teachers? And we also have a moderated and supported version of the Pathway Builder. So that is really about how you help yourself, right? But importantly, how you can go on to help teachers scaffold, how you can support them in self-directed learning. So as you can see, this is the further detail of the 3 areas that the MOOC deals with. Okay, so it's about training, it's about facilitation, and it's about self-directed learning. So learning from others, learning with others, and learning by yourself, because these are the 3 areas that we think are key to supporting not only your professional development as a teacher educator, but to go on to support the professional development of teachers. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about these programs in a bit more detail then now. So just take a minute to have a look at that. Okay, so it's 11 weeks, it's online. Okay, and it's about 2 things really. The first is it's an introduction to the ACT. Right, and I'll talk about the ACT on the next slide, but it's also in its own right a standalone professional development program for teacher educators. So it introduces you to the skills, some of the skills that we were talking about in relation to the CPD framework for teacher educators. It helps you to develop an understanding of your own competence, okay, and how to develop your competence further. It's a familiarization program, so it gets you ready for the assured certificate in teacher education. And it's very much focused on collaborative learning and online learning skills. So cohort of 20 to 25 teacher educators from different countries around the world. And an important aspect of that is to do with developing the skills to complete assignments, because as a preparatory course for the ACT itself includes assessment and assignments that are assessed formally. So that's the ELPACT, and you'll understand a little bit more when I talk about the ACT on this slide, why we have the ELPACT. Okay, so the assured certificate in teacher education is an externally validated certification course, a qualification in teacher education. So it's designed and delivered by the British Council, but it's validated by City and Guilds. It's accredited and quality assured through their quality assurance system. So it's like a benchmark, an international standard in teacher education. It deals with it's online. It deals with 3 areas. It's an introduction to teacher development, so building on what was covered in the ELPACT. It's about making training effective. So it's all about understanding the needs and responding to the needs of teachers. And there's a practicum, there's micro training, plus an assessed training practice at the end. And throughout the online course, there are assignments that are assessed against international standards. So at the end of the program, your qualification is it's benchmarked against the quality standards that are required in teacher education. It's a 13-week program, so it's a long program with approximately 6 hours study a week. So if you're looking for recognition of your skills, then this program, this qualification, is something that you might like to consider. Okay. ELPACT and ACT, it's about training, and the COP Leader Support Program is about facilitation skills. So just take a moment to have a look at that. So it's about the skills you need to set up, facilitate and sustain communities of practice. It's a 12-week program. It looks at key success features of a community of practice. It looks at how you maintain teacher motivation, how you develop reflective practices, and about how you evaluate the success of a community of practice. Okay, so about facilitation skills. Then finally, we talked about the supported Pathway Builder program. I won't go into that in any more because I've talked about the non-moderated version of it. So I just want to talk a little bit about the teacher educators who we call engagement leads that we work with in the delivery of all of the programs that I've been talking about. So, and the reason I'm doing this is because it will give you an idea of the kind of future career options that you might like to consider if you wanted to work, for example, with the British Council. So all of our engagement leads, all of the people that deliver our programs of learning for teacher educators, they're all qualified e-moderators. All of our work is online. They've gone through additional trainer programs, so an orientation, standardization program, and they've all signed up to the principles of effective online community engagement. What I was saying at the beginning about when you become a teacher educator, you join our teacher educator community. So all of our e-moderators, all of our engagement leads, all of our ACT assessors, they're all part of that community, and they're all people who believe in creating an environment which is safe, where collaborative learning can take place. So these are the people who are the trainers that we work with in the British Council for the delivery of the programs that I've been explaining. Okay, so that was a sort of a whistle-stop whirlwind tour of the kinds of things which I think are relevant to planning and developing a career as a teacher educator. So if you remember, we looked at why teacher educators are important and the kind of contribution that they can make to the professional development of teachers and education systems and institutions more broadly. We talked with reference to the examples I gave about the kind of roles that teacher educators perform. So there's lots of opportunities in different settings and different contexts to make a contribution as a teacher educator. It could be formal, it could be informal, it could be at the in-service level, it could be at the pre-service level. So great variety there. We talked also with reference to the CPD framework for teacher educators about the kinds of skills and knowledge, behaviours, attributes, qualities that teacher educators need to have, need to acquire, and we talked about how those are assessed, if you like, against this development stages scale. So looking at how you move from having a basic grounding in teaching, the foundation level, to the specialization where you're making a contribution to the profession as a whole. So a clear trajectory there that teacher educators can follow in developing their careers. Then we looked finally at some of the closed access and some of the open access opportunities. So two things to do there. The first is to go to the teacher educator landing page of the Teaching English website. That's the first thing for open access. And then for closed access, to contact the British Council in Brazil to say that you might be interested in some of the closed access programs which are already running and operating in Brazil. Okay, so those were the main things that I wanted to cover, but I'm going to finish now with what I've called building blocks. So working with teacher educators, it's given the British Council an idea of the kinds of things, and I'm just going to talk about this very simply and very briefly, that would be good things to think about if you want to start as a teacher educator, or indeed if you want to develop your skills as a teacher educator further. So 4 pieces of advice, right, put simply, and they're just examples. So a lot of the work that we do in the British Council, a lot of work that is done in general is online. So e-moderation, really important area of skills and knowledge that teacher educators can have. So as an example, to follow the International House Certificate in Online Tutoring, that's a basic 30-hour qualification that gives you the skills you need either to teach online or to train online. Okay, so either to work with learners or to work with teachers. Okay, we're not recommending that course. It's an example of the kind of certification level course that you can do to give you that entry point into e-moderation. Okay, so that's the first thing in terms of skills. I pick that out as being particularly important. So if you're thinking about what can I do next, then that would be a good thing to do. The other thing, and it's perhaps a little bit different for teacher educators compared to teachers. As a teacher educator, not only do you need a foundation in teaching, but you also need credibility. You need to be able to model teacher behavior. You need to be able to explain why this particular approach might be preferable to that particular approach. You need to be able to give feedback from a position that is, both constructive and supporting, but that is also informed by your own knowledge. Okay, so knowledge development, your understanding of research insight, of the evidence base around teacher education, that's particularly important. And on the link here to the British Council's publication and insight page, and it's very easy to go in there and search for research, insight articles that relate specifically to teacher education. So if there's a particular area that you're interested in, okay, then to develop further your familiarity with the evidence base around that particular interest. If it's about inclusion, for example, we have lots and lots of research, lots and lots of insight around inclusion as it relates to teacher education. Artificial intelligence, similarly. Multilingual approaches, similarly. So if there's an area that you're interested in, take the time and the opportunity to look into the research around that area of interest. Third thing is to develop your experience. As we saw in the CPD framework, one of the differences between the foundation level and the next level up, engagement level, is to do with you've developed your skills and knowledge through your experience, so you're about learning on the job. So one of the things that you could do very, very simply, and it happens all over the world, many different contexts, is that a teacher who would like to be a teacher educator, who wants to develop their skills further, goes to an institution, a school, and say, would you be interested in a workshop about this particular theme or this particular practice? So in order to develop your experience, to go out there and say, would you be interested in a workshop? It's a very simple piece of advice, but I would say it's a very good piece of advice. And then finally, then the other building block is about your network. So being able to draw on the opinions of others, to draw on the practice of working collaboratively with teachers, for example, it's a really, really important element of developing your skills further. So a group of teachers who are particularly interested in a particular subject, so take on the responsibility of coordinating that group, that community of practice. So very simple things, but building blocks. So you've got a certificate, basic certificate that will enable you to work online in teacher education. You've got the beginnings of an understanding of the evidence base, so your credibility, your authority as a teacher educator will be enhanced. Lots of different ways. It's just an example of developing your experience further by delivering training, delivering workshop, presenting at conferences, that kind of thing. So to get your experience of training, of speaking in front of teachers, of providing guidance to teachers. And then finally, another important building block is the people around you, your network. And there are lots of different ways that you can do this, but setting up a community of practice for teachers is one such way. Okay then, thank you very much indeed for listening to me today. I hope you found that useful. There's areas that we've suggested that you can look at in developing your career, in planning your learning. Please do visit the landing page for teacher educators of the Teaching English website, where all of the things that I've talked about today will be further explained, and you can see examples of that. So don't delay. If that's the direction in which you would like to go, plenty of things that you can do to get there. Okay, so I think we're going to have a question and answer session now. So please feel free to put your questions to me, and I will do my best to reply to them. Thanks very much indeed.
Likewise, Alessandra. It's been far too long, far too long. How are you?
True. I'm well. I'm doing really well. Now, even better, having you here on ELT Week Brazil live
Okay.
with me.
Great. How is it going then? This is week day 5, isn't it?
It's day 5, exactly. And we have people connecting to us here on YouTube. I'm going to be looking at this way because I'm looking on YouTube at the same time. So YouTube, we have, I'm going to say hello to people. There's people connecting from Pernambuco, people connecting from Minas Gerais, São Paulo, Argentina. That's nice, huh? And yeah, so Várzea de Palma, Várzea da Palma. Yeah. So John, in the opening I mentioned that you were here in Brazil with us for Brastiço, and that John had an opportunity to visit São Paulo, Brasília, and Goiás. In Goiás, it was very special because Goiás, it was the national conference. So he had the opportunity to meet people from all around Brazil. So just before we go into questions, I'm going to ask you, can you share a bit of your overall impression about the potential of the career as teacher educators for Brazilian while you were visiting?
Okay, it's a really good question, and I'm going to answer it, I think, by saying generally that, and you perhaps don't appreciate this as much as somebody coming from the outside to Brazil for the first time, as I do, the opportunity and potential and vibrancy, the vibe itself in Brazil is a really quite special thing. And I think that it's true also in the area of education, and it's particularly relevant to your question about teacher education as well. I met lots of people who are, really committed to the idea of helping others to develop professionally. Met lots of people who've got some really good skills in that area. So in short, I thought it was a really good environment, and I think if we can play a role in contributing to that, especially on the professionalization, setting standards, looking at kinds of skills that you need, what kinds of opportunities are out there, working, with the British Council, delivering courses for teachers, then I think we will be very, very happy indeed.
I'm on mute. Guilty. Sorry. So thank you for sharing that, John. And actually, I wanted to go a step back and take a look at, mention something that you said about the skills that are needed to develop a career as a teacher educator. And you did mention be a solid English teacher. And you also mentioned English skills, language skills. So I've been wanting to start a campaign in Brazil, which is stop saying you're sorry for the level of your English before you start speaking in English. I mean, I've in meetings, in calls, in events, in many places, every time I see this a lot, Brazilian start saying like, sorry for my English, and then just goes on with beautiful English,
Yeah.
absolutely easy to understand and delivers the message and so on. So I wanted to take your feeling about that after visiting us.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point, isn't it? And I was talking about it, that very point, a couple of days ago with a couple of people who are going to be presenting a webinar as part of a monthly webinar program. And I think this is the answer. There are many different answers, but I think it's one of the answers anyway. That if you stop thinking about yourself or the teachers that you work with, or indeed the learners that you teach, as somebody who is weak in some way, who has weak language proficiency, and to think about yourself as somebody that is an emerging bilingual. What a great thing that many English people are denied, because English is so prevalent everywhere. Our focus on learning other languages has slipped, and we're in this terrible position of not just of being monolingual. So that reorientation, that thinking to yourself, it's not a weakness on my part. It's actually something that is very special and that I'm developing. So I'm becoming a bilingual, becoming a multilingual person. So to think about it in terms of not stop thinking about it in terms of a deficit model, and to stop apologizing. I think that's absolutely right. It's a really good point.
Yes, thank you, John. I agree with you. So I'm saying that I'm going to start a campaign.
Yeah.
Stop apologizing for your English around here in Brazil.
Right.
And I'll do the same. Yeah, I
Sign me
will.
up then. Yeah. Because, for example, I speak, as you know, I only have 20 words of Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, but I feel like I can use those. And I wouldn't apologize and say, oh, I'm really sorry, I've only got 20 words. I would say, I've got 20 words and I'm going to put them to good effect.
Great, thanks, John. Well, John, let's talk a bit about our experience during the last 2 years in building pathways for teacher educators in Brazil. So, just to share with the audience, so we had around 70 teacher educators from Brazil. Some of them weren't teacher educators before they started, but they wanted to be. And they took on the learning pathways for teacher educators course, and then they did the accredited certificate, and also some of them did the e-moderation course. Okay, it took 2 years. Why? It's not 2 years every single day. It was courses that we had to kind of find what was the best timing for these people that are also English professionals. They are teachers, or they already are teacher educators, etc. So around, I would say the whole thing took 120 hours for people that did all of them. And this is amazing. We, as a result, actually, the British Council had them join us in a project to do a course for English teachers, 500 English teachers. We had amazing results of engagement. So over 70% of completion rates. And we are even shortlisted for international prize around using technology. Yeah, using technology to promote professional development. But I have to tell you, well, this is going to be on YouTube. I might be in trouble, but I have to tell you that I think the platform is amazing, but the potential, I mean, the mentoring of these teacher educators that were just recently joining the courses and the activities is so great. So can you explore a bit about what the difference that we have in self-access courses, of meaning that how much the teachers learn really, and also the ones that are moderated.
Okay.
So, and exploring that part of the career.
Great. Okay, then. Well, there's about 1,200 points you covered in there, Alessandra. So maybe if I go in reverse order and talk a little bit about the difference, if you like, between learning on your own and learning with a mentor or with a trainer or facilitator alongside you, and importantly, with other learners alongside you too. Um, I think it's absolutely key for a teacher educator because, and this is an important point, a teacher educator is a role model for teachers. Yeah. So in teacher educator learning, therefore, to learn from other professionals, more experienced professionals, professionals who've got different perspectives, professionals who've got the evidence base, they've looked into the research that says this is good teacher training, that they've got good networks that they draw on, that they've developed their skills on that foundation of good teaching. They've got some basic certification, those sorts of things. Those people there who've developed all of that over time are really, really good role models that teacher educators, future teacher educators can work alongside in order to develop their own professional persona, their own professional identity. Just one other thing of the 12,000 things that you mentioned in that question about time. How long does it take? Well, extensive programs of learning, which is what we've been focusing on. So learning at the same time as working, these take a long time to complete. The ACT, for example, is a 12-week course, 6 hours study time a week. But that's a good thing, because how long does it take to become a doctor? Would you want to go to the hospital and be treated by a doctor who'd had a 4-month crash course in anatomy? I don't think so. So investing time, thinking longer term about your development of your skills, development of your identity, that kind of thing, all of that is really time well invested. And we shouldn't expect, in the same way as we don't expect our learners to learn English overnight, do we? We shouldn't expect people to become credible, qualified, networked, connected teacher educators in a short period of time, because that is a long journey, a journey we're all on, which is about lifelong learning. I didn't answer all of those questions, but there's something in there that I think relates to what you were talking about.
Okay, I'll take note of the another 11,000 that you did it.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding, John. Thank you so much for this. Totally agree. I mean, it does take time, and you can do it in bits, right? You don't have to do all of it all together, all the way. So I think the last message that we could leave for the Brazilian audience that is online or that are going to watch the recording is, if you think that you might be interested, go on Teaching English website, take a look. I would start, I think they should start with a pathway builder, right? And go for it. There's a lot of space, there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're British Council is here to support them. So I would say that's my takeaway for today. And what's your takeaway just before we close this?
Well, as we always agree on everything, Alexandra, that is also my takeaway as well. And I think in that, the pathway builder that you mentioned, two things, I think. One is about understanding what you're good at and understanding what you're less good at. So looking at that framework of competences, taking the self-assessment test. I think that's one key thing about the pathway builder. And then having a longer term view of where you would like to be, where your career is taking you. Are you happy at the moment with what you're doing? Are you happy, Alexandra? I think so. What are the things that would make me happier? what are the kinds of learnings? What are my interests? And to think about those in terms of a longer term vision and the pathway that you might need to go along in order to get to where you would like to be.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. And answering your question, you're right. I'm very happy to have this session with you this morning here in Brazil about this topic, about career opportunities for teachers, English teachers and teacher educators. Really happy with having the opportunity to have this third edition of ELT Week. You know that we have more than 7,000 views already. And that's just the live sessions, not the recording. So I would like to thank all the Brazilian audience and actually audience from Argentina as well, I guess, that are joining us today. I'd like to say a special hello to Raquel Ribeiro, which is one of our teacher educators. She's joining us online as well. And yeah, that's it for us. Now we have another great session. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. Take care and enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank
All the best.
you.
Bye now.